Welcome to yet another edition of this Tom Green podcast. As always, we crack open a fresh new edition of sports podcast content. Now, I will admit tonight I'm not feeling 100%. I contracted a little bit of a cold from one of my baggers at work. I work at a Kroger's, which if you're in Arizona, it's Fry's. If you're in Colorado, as Bruce is, it's King Soopers. If you're in Tennessee, it's Giant Eagle and such. So I actually got some inspiration to show up to work and to do this show tonight from Chicago Bulls head coach Tom Thibodeau. I know we're doing an MLB show, but I got to play this clip from Tibbs.
I think the teams that are special always play with a rare intensity.
Win the game. Win the game. And then everything's always the same.
You look at championship caliber teams, that's how they play.
Chicago hard. Chicago hard. Chicago hard. Up and into it, right from the start of the game.
Each game is an exam. You study, you develop, you grow, and then you're measured.
You can get this done. Win this game. That's all I want you thinking about. Quarter by quarter by quarter. Guys, keep pushing. Keep pushing. Don't give in. Push through the pain. The guy who can push the furthest will win the game.
You have to embrace pressure. Pressure is your friend. It's a privilege.
You gotta keep grinding. Keep grinding. Keep grinding. Don't quit. Keep down.
I don't think you ever really feel pressure if you're putting everything you have into each and every day.
Help each other. Talk early. Early, loud, continuous talk. Tied together. Hustle play.
Do it with a steal. Tight. He's keeping the ball in play on the first sideline.
12 great minutes. 12 great minutes. That's what we need right now. 12 great minutes.
I was pretty much saying that to myself. Once again, that for this pod, I need to give myself
12 great minutes. 12 great minutes. That's what we need right now. 12 great minutes.
Okay, maybe a few more than 12, but you get my point. With that being said, we have Bruce Cagle Jr. and Johnnie Black back for round two. Like AC/DC, he is back in black. Welcome to the show, fellas.
Thank you. Good to be here, Tom. Thank you for having us, man. Great to be here.
You bet. I hope that Bruce and Johnny as well, you're both inspired by that, as both of us have been fighting off certain colds and whatnot going around in the good old US of A.
It's been the allergies for me later in the year, surprisingly enough. It's the kids, man. Kids went to school. They came back and infected me. Hopefully I survive.
Yeah, like I told Bruce off air, my mom actually works at an early childhood developmental class, and sometimes she brings in the colds and stuff that they got. So thankfully it wasn't from her, it was from one of my baggers at work, but still, where were we recording? We getting this show on the road. So that being said, let's talk some baseball. We got some heated division races going on, especially in the Central, am I right? LOL.
Oh, yeah. There's not much going on there anymore.
So, I'm going to go on a limb and say that Cleveland's got this, even though they've got the Y in front of their name. So, that's pretty much what we've got going on in the Central. So, my question to you guys is, with these last 2.5 weeks, I'll start with Johnny. What should Cleveland do right now to prepare themselves for the October ahead?
The bottom line is they need to get healthy. The bullpen, Cody Allen's been hit and miss. They need to get him right. Mm-hmm. Andrew Miller, they need to get him healthy for the playoffs. Making sure Donaldson stays healthy. And, of course, yesterday, after they clinched the other day, they rested Lindor, Ramirez, Edwin, all those guys. This is what they need to concentrate on. They have a distinct advantage now in being able to set up their rotation, resting all these guys. They even have the luxury before the playoffs of putting some guys on a 10-day DL if they want. Mm-hmm. So that's the most important thing for them at this point, because they're probably not going to catch Houston for the second seed, and they're obviously not going to catch Boston for the number 1 seed. So they're basically the 3 seed. Mm-hmm. They're going to be probably going to Houston in the first round, is the way it looks. But they need to set up their pitching staff. They need Kluber healthy to match up with Verlander. They need to try to get Bauer back, and they have Clevenger. They got to match up with Verlander, Cole, and Keuchel, and Morton. I mean, that's That's the bottom line.
Yeah, pretty much the key here is don't anyone get hurt. Rest, don't. But of course, there's always a superstition in the playoffs, and as a Detroit fan, I can attest to this. You rest them too long, sometimes they can be a little rusty coming back. Because in the 2006 and 2012 World Series, Detroit had a week break in between both, and both times they were rusty. They went 1-8 in that span. So the key is, I feel, to rest, but also keep the legs fresh. With that, we'll go to Bruce. Bruce, what do you think? Cleveland, clinching division, what shall they do to be ready, be focused for October?
Oh, I 100% agree. I think they just need to relax to a point, not let off the throttle, but they need to rest their players. They need to get mentally prepared for what a grind October is going to be. You saw they skipped Kluber just last weekend. Not that anything was wrong with him, even though he had a very poor start. It was only 1.2 innings, but they just skipped him because they want to get their rotation set up for October. You heard Johnny mention it. Going to most likely Houston, they got to match up rightly. So you got to have Kluber set up to pitch game one. I don't know who else you're going to have. I don't know why you would have anyone else pitch game one. They ended up activating Josh Donaldson. I mean, this is a great time to get him some bats so he can actually become a threat in the playoffs, because he really hasn't had that season where he gets to get in a rhythm or anything like that, and that's going to be key for Josh Donaldson. I mean, he's a veteran, so I don't think it's going to take long. As long as he's healthy and he can swing the bat really well, we've seen what he can do. We talked about it last time on the show, and you see he's come back on 9/11, and he only has 2 hits, but one of them was a home run. So that's what he brings. They want him to hit home runs. He isn't playing every day. He's playing every other day right now, and just trying to get in rhythm, get their lineup set up where they can go into Houston and give them a really tough matchup, because that's not going to be easy no matter what you do. They're defending champions. They know how to play right now. They're doing the same thing. Yes, they have to fend off Oakland, but I mean, we all believe they're going to fend off Oakland and be there. So it's about being healthy. Johnny talked about it earlier. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, and as much as I'd love to see Oakland win the division, of course we're going to hit that in a minute, Houston just looks too strong. So I'm going to quote, and of course my dad is in the background, I'm going to quote one of his favorite guys, the great Aaron Rodgers.
5 letters. Just for everybody out there in Packerland and yourself today.
In Believe Land, you mean?
RELAX. Relax.
So that's pretty much what Bruce is saying. And of course, my dad, if I'm going to look, is probably smiling as I mentioned Aaron Rodgers on this show. He's eating right now, but he's smiling inside. So that being said, pretty much relax, but not too much. Just get ready, and then Donaldson get some bats, get some AB experience, and get ready. So that being said, let's go to the AL East. The Yankees, man, 91 wins, 11 and a half games back. Bruce, I mean, man, this stinks if you're the Yankees, doesn't it?
Has to be one of the more disappointing 91-win seasons I've ever seen. A large fact is they're actually fading pretty bad in the last couple of weeks too. They haven't been playing well, and 91 wins and you're still a dozen games back, and you're actually might lose the top seed in the wild card right now. And that's the tough part too, because I don't know if they can go on the road and there. I don't think they can. I don't know what's going wrong. Their rotation doesn't have the depth that it needs. Sonny Gray got moved to the bullpen, as he should have, because he's been awful as a starter. Right. Severino was amazing the first half, just flat out amazing.
And I got to see I actually got to see one of his starts in that amazing run. I went to the doubleheader in Detroit early in June, and the day portion, Severino pitched 8 strong. Continue.
Yeah, and the problem that I saw with him is he ran through a huge stretch where he gave up a ton of home runs. And it was a ton. It was like 9 home runs in, what was it, like 5 games or something like that? And you just can't do that. But even still, you take a look. 5.2 innings on 9-12, 1 earned, 5 strikeouts, good. The day before that, at Oakland, where I'm saying you can't really go play, 2.2 innings, 6 earned. He didn't even give up a home run, and they have the home run leader over there in Chris Davis, or I believe he's home run leader, but he has shown that he struggled in big games. Last year against the Minnesota Twins, he barely lasted 1 inning. He almost blew the game, allowed a ton of runs. At Oakland, just a couple of starts ago, in a must-win game to really give them some breathing room, he blew open the game, took the L too. They have Masahiro Tanaka. He's good if his splitter's on, but if his splitter's not on, he's just serving up home runs. How much are you starting CC Sabathia if you have to play a 1-game wild card? Who are you starting in that bullpen that you feel 100% comfortable with? They're looking in a position most likely, I think, to be in the wild card. I don't think they're going to lose out completely just because Tampa Bay, even though they were supposed to be terrible, they're still 7 games back at 82 wins. I believe they're going to be 1 or 2. Who are they throwing in that game? I have no idea. Are they going to throw a bullpen game with all of their guys, like their strong bullpen arms? Honestly, I think that would probably be one of the better ideas. What do you guys think?
Yeah, honestly, in the wild card game, my thought is you start your best because you don't know if you're going to play tomorrow. But like you said, Severino has been the past month, and when you're in a month, you're not going to go from to amazing in a week. Yeah, of course, I could be wrong, just like the NFL any given Sunday, but if you're not relying on Severino, CeCe's always hit or miss, and Gray is not good. Lance Lynn is not the twin. He's not the smart. He's not I shouldn't say smart, but he's not the great twin or cardinal that he was. So you're stuck with, God, who knows? Betances as an opener? Who knows? Johnny, fill me in.
Yeah, I don't know if they go with an opener. I mean, honestly, I think if the Yankees, with that wild card game, if I'm Aaron Boone, I roll out Tanaka.
That's one I missed, you're right.
He's got the playoff experience from last year, especially. And he was pretty good last year in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you put Severino in that position to win that 1 game. Because if you got Tanaka out there and you give him that start, he has the experience, he can settle himself down. We saw it with Severino with the wild card game last year, like Bruce mentioned, against the Twins. Now this was against the Twins, who were a surprise last year and don't exactly have a pedigree.
The Twins were just
in the first inning. Granted, Didi came back and hit a home run in the bottom of the first, so and it helped out. And they wound up winning. But I think you put Tanaka with the experience out there, and if his splitter's on, he can shut down anyone, as he showed last year. And then, if you get past that wild card game, at least you have Severino as your number 1. Going into the final, the next series against whoever you may play. I mean, which will probably be Boston.
Oh, and that'll be a series for the ages. I was going to say, the Twins were as much of a playoff surprise as the 2006 Bears were making the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. But Rex Grossman.
Yeah, Rex Grossman as your quarterback. Sounds gross. So
And
if
it's
you...
funny, though, the Twins have a guy named Robbie Grossman.
That's true.
There's some similarity there.
Hey, can I touch on Tanaka and Severino real quick?
Go right ahead.
All right, so the thing with Tanaka, so Johnny, I agree with part of it because on the road he has a 3.31 ERA. I really think they might be playing on the road. At home he has a 3.66, so I'm not even sure that makes me feel great. He's given up 23 home runs this year. The home runs are the problem, and we all know that. But here's the thing that I look at. Against right-handed hitters, he gives up 16 home runs versus 7. when you take a look at Oakland, they have a ton of righties on their team. They also are third in the league in home runs hit. So that to me almost screams disaster as well, just because if he's not on, and if he's at home, let's say, do you want him pitching at home or do you want him pitching on the road? Like, do you want Oakland in Yankee Stadium with the third best home run hitters? Like, giving Chris Davis a better home run park to hit in? I don't know if I like that. And then you take a look at Luis Severino over the second half. It's been so interesting. His K per 9 has been better. His walk per 9 has been better than the first half. But he's been horrible compared. Horrible. We're talking a 6.35 ERA. So when Tom, you touched on that he had a bad month, it's not 1 month. It's 50-plus innings at this point of a 6.35 ERA. He had 9 home runs in 51 innings, where he had 10 home runs in 128 innings in the first half. All of a sudden, hitters are just crushing the ball against him. 306, 339, 526. What is, do you want him? That's bad to see. Obviously, yes, you want him pitching a first game, but even if he pitches in Boston at home, you're almost taking an L game 1 there, too. You can't trust that in that situation if they make it through Oakland. In the second half, though, it looks like he's been a little unlucky with his left-on-base percentage. It's at 60%. But I don't know how much luck it is if he's giving up so many home runs. He's at a 1.6 home run per 9 in the second half. That is not good. I mean, in July, he was at a 2.42 home run per 9. August, 1.62 home run per 9. You're anybody you get on base, you're pretty much letting them score the very next at bat if you're giving up a jack. And he's just serving them up right now. I think what I heard about him is people are just sitting on a couple of his pitches, and they're waiting to see a couple of them, and just the fastball that they know is going to be somewhere hittable, or the slider that they're looking to try and be down and away, and they're sitting on some pitches. It's going to be very tough for them to right this storm without a true number 1 pitcher that's going to take that staff and just pound the ball down someone's throat in a wild card game to give them that 7 to 8 inning shutout start that they really, really need.
Right. And Larry Rothschild's got 2.5 weeks to really find out what's going on with Severino, what's going on with CC, what's going on with these guys. A snippet for Severino and those guys from SpongeBob.
Air is not good, Patrick! Air is not good!
Meaning air behind the ball is not good. I think we can infer what I mean by that. So with that being said, does Boston cruise to this division win? I think so. Johnny?
Well, yeah, they're 11 and a half games up now with 12 games to play. They have 12, the Yankees have 13. They're 11 and a half games up. That's what I mean. The magic number is, 2, I think?
Something like that.
They pretty much got the division. We all knew that basically a month ago. So the Red Sox have to worry about Mookie Betts. We got a little banged up last night.
Mm-hmm.
So, he came out of the game. They need to. It was a side injury, so it possibly could be an oblique. Okay. They need to rest him the rest of the way. And he's their best player. I love JD Martinez, and everyone loves what he's done for the Red Sox, and everything that was advertised in the offseason. Mm-hmm. But Mookie Betts is still the straw that stirs the drink there.
Mm-hmm.
He's the best outfielder they have. He's one of the best players, and he's an MVP candidate. He's arguably as good as Trout this year. I mean, he's got a 10 WAR this year. He was the first player to 10. They need to get him healthy. If he's not healthy, I really don't. Doesn't really matter what happens. If he's not healthy for the playoffs, I think they're done.
And that's a good question I'll toss to Bruce. If Betts is not healthy to start the playoffs, will the Red Sox be remembered by like the 2001 Seattle Mariners?
They might. I don't think. I mean, yes, I think they have some other players on the team that could potentially really pull the weight of a series if they need to. But I agree with Johnny 100%. Get Mookie Betts healthy. Fantasy owners, I'm sorry, but I would be looking at him not playing a lot of the time the rest of the way, just because as a Boston, just as you look at Boston, they need him. He's a leadoff hitter. He's having, like Johnny said, an MVP type of season. He's doing what everybody thought he would do from last year with an insanely, when he was at a 264 batting average. Nobody thought that would happen. He had a 268 batted. This year, 337, 431, 619 is a 619 slugging. Are you kidding me? Like, if your oblique is jacked up, you cannot slug the ball like that. So get this guy healthy. He's 25 years old. Like John said, he is the engine to this thing. I love JD as well, but it's all about Mookie.
Mookie has been the cog in the wheel that has helped. Well, it's not so much the cog in the wheel, but the bolt that has really revved up this engine. That is the Boston Red Sox. So, Boston Red Sox winning in 1 or 2 days. Probably, maybe even once I put this podcast up, they would have clinched the division by now. But 103 wins for the Red Sox. What an achievement. Now they just have to finish. With that being said, we move to the AL West. Well, actually, before we move to the AL West, I should ask, the Rays, 82 wins, 7 back in the wild card, and if they were in the NL West, they'd be looking at the playoffs. How surprised are you guys? I'll start with Bruce.
Honestly, I'm really surprised because I kind of thought it would be a train wreck over there as well. But when they traded Chris Archer, I believe they got a steal on that one. I don't honestly think Chris Archer's going to be very good next year. He might be able to bounce back, but something behind him kind of shows that it's a skill set at this point, not necessarily the NL or the AL East that haunts him. It might be a skill set problem. Tampa got 3 major league guys that they're ready to throw out there right now. They're 82 and 66. I mean, yes, they're so far back, but you cannot think of this season for them as a failure, because they were talked about as being the laughing stock of the MLB with this, we're going to throw this bullpen by committee approach. People just laughed at them. But if you take a look, they're 82 wins. They would be 1 win behind Atlanta. They would be same amount of wins as St. Louis, who's currently in the wild card hunt. They would be leading the NL West, like you referred to earlier, Tom. So this is a very good team. Next year, people are gonna actually copy them, and they are gonna be a force.
Definitely.
Johnny, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't sure if this opener idea would work, but they've made it work. And I agree with the Archer thing. They got a couple major league ready players. Blake Snell has been, he's been incredible this year. And he's stepped up faster than they thought he would. I mean, we all knew he had the talent and everything like that, but he's really commanded the AL East. You look at him when he faces the Yankees in Boston and stuff, and he doesn't blink an eye. He's been great. And honestly, Tampa Bay, they're 82 and 66. They're a half game behind Cleveland. If they were just in the AL Central, they would be a half game behind Cleveland for the division.
That would be quite a race.
It's crazy to think that way. Unfortunately, they're in the AL East, and they've had to play the Yankees in Boston. They have to play them 19 times each during the season. If they were in the AL Central and they were playing Minnesota and Chicago and Detroit, who knows what their record would be?
Oh my gosh.
And Kansas City, if they were in the AL Central, they could very well have 10 more wins.
I could see it.
Easily be challenging Cleveland and be right in the hunt. Unfortunately, they're in the AL East. They just don't have enough firepower to match up with Boston and the Yankees.
Yeah, I'm imagining that picture in my head, having to play Tampa during the season as a Detroit fan. Oh boy, that would be quite a race for the
I'm a Twins fan, believe me, I can hear you.
Hey, fun fact, Blake Snell is third in the league in ERA at 2.03 behind Chris Sale and Jacob deGrom. So when you look at when Johnny said Blake Snell's been running the show, quietly been running the show to a 2.03 ERA with 19 wins. Everybody looks at that win number, and Blake Snell leads the league in that in that category. So that's with 30 less innings than some of these other guys like Corey Kluber and Scherzer. So just think of when Blake Snell kind of matures into a more complete pitcher. What can we really expect from him?
We could perhaps see another rendition of Jake Arrieta. And man, I loved Arrieta when he was a Cub.
I mean, Snell's got to be in the discussion. Granted, I don't think he'll win it, but he's got to be in the discussion with the Cy Young Award in the AL.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree.
Got to be in the discussion at least.
Definitely agree with an ERA of around 2. I mean, that's in this league, the league of the home run. If your ERA is around 2, I mean, you're doing something right.
I mean, are you going to give it to Chris Sale? Chris Sale has 14 less innings than Blake Snell, 7 less wins, 3 less starts. He barely has an ERA under him. He has a 1.92 ERA to a 2.03 for Blake Snell. If you're going to give it to Chris Sale, how can you really give it to him over Blake Snell?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And I don't know, Tom, if you want to go into, the segue into the Cy Young Award race in the AL, now that we're talking about it, but...
Right. Might as well.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Sale, the thing with Chris Sale is, yes, he has 14 less innings. He only has 150 innings pitched, Chris Sale. His whip is better at .84 compared to Snell's .98. Yes, the ERA is comparable. Sale's given up less home runs at 10. Snell's given up 16. And the thing that strikes me about Sale over Snell, and this comes with maturity too, and I'm sure Snell is going to improve, obviously, but Chris Sale has a 6.73 K to walk rate. Snell's is 3.48.
Right.
That's a large difference between the strikeouts to walk ratio. And that is where I give it to Sale over Snell. But that being said, you have Kluber and Verlander, who both have around 200 innings pitched. And yes, the ERAs are a little higher, but the numbers are similar. So who do you give it to? That's the question.
Right.
Kluber has the 18 wins, and his team's already done clinched the playoffs. His team was, that's one thing you have to look at, where Blake Snell's still not making the playoffs. Kluber, his team clinched it. Sure, it's a crummier division, but clinching the playoffs already is still clinching the playoffs already. I mean, are we going to really argue that? I mean, Garrett Cole could be there, Justin Verlander could be there as well. So, I don't know, it's tough. How much do you put into innings pitched? You're going to have to really weigh in maybe the 26, 27, 28 starts that Chris Sale gets. Is that better than the potential of 33, 34, 35 that Justin Verlander gets? I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't
know. We talked about this before, Bruce. We talked about the 30 wins and 200 inning threshold kind of thing when we were talking earlier about DeGrom and Scherzer. Once you get to that point, it kind of, the difference between 230 innings and 215 is negligible.
But the difference between 230 and 170...
Right, that's the difference. Verlander has 202 innings. Chris Sale has 150.
Yep.
At 25 starts. Verlander's got 32. That's the thing I'm saying, is that's what knocks Sale down. Now, Sale has been dominant. He's been Kershaw-like, so to speak.
Right.
Yes.
But Verlander's got the longevity, and so does Kluber. Kluber's at 195 innings. And Verlander actually leads the league with a 7.47 K to walk rate. I mean, 7.5 Ks per walk. That's impressive.
Oh.
That is impressive. With a sub-1 whip, 2.67 ERA, over 200 innings. I think that's more impressive than Chris Sale's, even his 1.92 ERA, over 150 innings.
Let's be honest, it smashes Corey Kluber's 195 innings of a 2.91 ERA with an 8.95 K per 9.
Right.
Corey Kluber has struggled this year. We've seen it hasn't been smooth sailing. When you talk about Cy Young, we'll talk about this on the NL side for sure.
Right.
But you gotta you've got to have a consistent season. I can't see this season that just kind of has a couple major blips in the radar here. We're talking Cy Young. We're nitpicking. We're really nitpicking. Kluber over here, 25% K rate, 3.8% walk rate, which is awesome. That's the part I like. It keeps his K minus walk percentage at 21.8%. So that's the number of your strikeout percentage. You have your walk percentage minus your strikeout percentage to get that, and you get that number, and over 20% is nice, but take a look at last year for Kluber. He was at 29.5%. He's dropped significantly from last year.
Yes,
and this year, some of his underlying numbers just don't support that he's been better than Verlander or even Cole at that part. And so I think for me, Kluber is distant, third or fourth in the race. I'm having a hard time putting Sale realistically winning it with 150 innings. That's the tough part for me.
I agree with you. I think Kluber's been off this year, and I just wanted to throw Verlander in there because Verlander has been the guy who's got 202 innings, which Snell's 164 and Sale's 150. I put my numbers are, and Verlander leads the league in K to walk rate. I think he's a workhorse. He gives you this day in, day out. Exactly.
His FIP is a 293. His xFIP's a 314. Everything here is showing you he's 100% stable. This is what he's giving you day in, day out. I think he edges out Garrett Cole by a tad bit because that's tough because Garrett Cole still has a .86 home run per 9, where Verlander's 1.25, but I don't care. I don't care. I think I agree fully with Johnny on that one. Give me Verlander. I think Verlander takes the Cy Young on that one, and I think he should take it pretty easily. I think Garrett Cole probably should be number 2, and then there's a distant gap for me.
Yeah, and I'm going to actually chime in here. I agree with you guys. I think Verlander should be the Cy Young. After he was traded in the 11th hour from Detroit to Houston, which kind of broke me when I woke up September 1st of 2017, but besides the point, he's really found a second wind in Houston, and he's really credited but Kate Upton with that because of their now marriage and now expecting kid on the way. That's really helped him focus, really, and
turning around his life.
Yes, definitely.
Except you saved him.
Yeah, pretty much. And excuse me, this cold, I tell you. Another thing is Garrett Cole. He was dominant to start the season, and then I don't know where he went, but I mean Cole and Verlander was a dominant 1-2 punch in Houston to start the year, and hopefully in the playoffs it will be a strong 1-2 punch to get them through to the World Series. So yes, I have to give the Cy Young to Verlander as well. Sale, like you guys said, innings has been an issue, but he's been on par with Snell. The thing is, just not enough innings. Snell has been the underlying workhorse in this Cy Young race that really hasn't gotten much attention. And of course, Kluber has been Kluber. And also in this American League website, it's talking about Severino, but we've of course talked a lot about Severino and how he has really struggled. So pencil out Severino, pencil out Bauer too. Give Verlander the Cy Young. Give Kate Upton the ring, too.
100%.
So with that being said, to the Wild Wild West. Houston, Oakland. As I was saying in a tweet in August, I really wanted to see Oakland win it because they were kind of mimicking what Houston has done with the prospects and all that. But they've been mirrored by Houston because of Houston's dominant success. So with that being said, Houston, do we all feel that Houston is just a little too strong for Oakland at this point?
Yes, I do.
I agree. They have a 4.5 game lead right now. They have 13 games left. Oakland has 12. Mm-hmm. And the schedules are similar. Houston's got Seattle at home, the Angels at home. Then they go to Toronto and Baltimore. I don't see them blowing a 4.5 game lead against those teams. I'm sorry. With the next 13 games against those 4 teams, it doesn't I can't see that. That was the professionalism and the veterans they have on that team, and they've been there before last year.
Right.
They're gonna win another 100 games, even if they go 6-7 these last 13 games.
Yeah.
It's still gonna take Oakland to go, 11 and 2.
Yeah.
I don't see it happening.
I'd love to see it, but Johnny's right. I just don't see it. Bruce, anything to add?
Let me just say this.
Sure.
Trevor Cahill, Mike Fiers, Brett Anderson versus Justin Verlander, Garrett Cole, Dallas Keuchel, or Charlie Morton. You pick which one you believe is more dominant there.
But you forgot Edwin Jackson.
Yeah, that's
sorry
pretty
about that
obvious.
one. I think you take a look at that one. Offenses, you can almost argue they're somewhat similar because Oakland, do not sleep on that offense. They can do damage. They have one of the premier defensive third basemen there. They have a premier power hitter. Steven Piscotty's really been coming on lately. Don't sleep on them. They're really good still. But give me the overall depth of the Houston Astros. Springer, Altuve, Bregman. I mean, he's an MVP candidate right there in the AL. With Carlos Correa, that people are still not. I mean, we don't hear enough about him still. And then pitching staff, I said I didn't even get into the bullpen. They're going to be a little too strong. Johnny mentioned a 4.5 game lead. I think it's going to be enough. They're gonna make it, and they're going to be fine. And they're going to be a very, very tough out in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. I do have one thing to add, and that is kind of on a lighter note. Have you guys have seen George Springer's headshot the last few years? Am I correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Well, my cousin, my 110% Christian cousin, I took him to Tigers Astros. This was the year before they started to become dominant. And he said, and I quote, he thinks George Springer's headshot looks like he's on weed. So I have a quick message for George Springer. It's from Stephen A.
Do it again.
Stay off the weed. Stay off the weed. And you can't stay off the weed. He ain't getting busted for using weed.
You got that, kids? Stay off the weed.
Stephen A. should take his own advice once in a while. Some of the things he tweets and says.
That's true.
I mean, he tweets and says some crazy stuff, and I think he needs to take his own advice.
That's true too. Oh,
sharing it with Skip Bayless.
Yeah, that's one thing too. That's another thing is that Skip Bayless is nuts, but First Take is just not the same without Skip or Kerry Champion in that matter.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't stand Skip Bayless. That's just me.
I can't do it either.
I never liked him.
Well,
I don't mind Stephen A. Stephen A. gets a little crazy sometimes, but I appreciate his professionalism for the most part, and he's got experience. Skip Bayless is a fan with a following.
Yes.
He's sitting on the show. I mean, he comes up with some crazy stuff, and it's basically just for ratings.
Yes.
I used to watch him with Woody Page on Cold Pizza.
Those were the days when I was in 5th grade. My dad was in his last year in the Bay City Police Department. I was at Grandma's every single day, just watching TV and eating pizza just about every single day. When watching Cold Pizza, those were the days, bringing me back, man.
And they were actually decent back then.
Yeah.
And Skip Bayless just he got too big of a head for himself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
my opinion.
And Johnny's pretty much added to my point that Skip was just crazy, but it was just hilarious to see Stephen A. just be smart at Skip and win just about every debate.
yeah, pretty much. Now Shannon's doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Shannon Sharp. In fact, as you see, my profile picture is with the host of Undisputed, Jenny. So, with that being said, off to the NL races, shall we? We'll first start with the East, and to our surprise, Ronald Acuna Jr. is still batting leadoff and still living, which is very good. He hasn't gotten hit by a ton of pitches yet.
I can't believe he got hit by that one pitch, but I mean, at least he has taken that and ran with it.
Yeah, and I had joked last time on the show that with carrying 3 catchers, that Ronald Acuna Jr. wears catching equipment to the plate so that when he gets hit, when the leadoff spot, at least it hits him in the equipment and not somewhere where he would hurt.
Right, he's been incredible. I mean, Acuna has been everything as advertised.
I have not seen what him and Soto are doing for Rookie of the Year is amazing. I don't know what to say, honestly, sometimes about it.
Mm-hmm. And as the Cespedes family barbecue has tweeted time and time again, Acuna Moncada. What a wonderful phrase.
I like them. They're a good follow on Twitter. I like them.
So if the Cespedes family barbecue is listening to this show, we got to get them on the show. That'd be a riot if they were to come on the show. Kind of like when I mentioned the Mad Dog the last time. So Atlanta, Philly, and Washington is still, mathematically in it, but realistically out. Who's winning this one? Johnny, we'll start with you.
Well, I had high hopes for Philly, and it's not looking good for them. They're 6.5 out of the division, but the good news for Philly is that they control their own destiny for the most part. They have 7 games left with Atlanta. 4 in Atlanta, and then 3 at home to finish the season. So they kind of control their own destiny. Same thing with Atlanta. Atlanta's got the 7 with Philly, obviously, and they have 3 against St. Louis, while Philly has 4 in Colorado. There's going to be a lot of mixing and matching here, and a lot of competition in the NL for the wild card and for the division. Philly's got their work cut out for them, but they can, with the next 3, Atlanta's at home against St. Louis, Philly is home against the Mets. If they can pick up a game over these next 3 days, they have 4 in Atlanta then to finish out the week. They take 3 out of 4, they move closer.
Right.
It's really up to them. Philly has to get on a hot streak. They've been bad for the past month, basically. Their hitting's been horrible. Their bullpen has been meh. With the exception of Nola and Arrieta, the starting staff hasn't been very good. Pavetta's hit and miss. Velasquez is a dumpster fire at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. He can't get out of the 3rd inning, it seems. And even when he gets to the 5th inning, he throws 105 pitches. So they got their work cut out for them, Philly, over the next 2 weeks. It's up to them to win these head-to-head matchups and to take that division. And Washington's actually only a game behind them, which is interesting.
Right, even though they've pretty much sold on the year with trading Murphy to the Cubs, they're still mathematically in it, so might as well boy it out.
Yeah.
Bruce, what do you got?
Atlanta's going to cruise most likely to the division title, I feel like. Philadelphia hasn't really grabbed any traction at all the past month. It's been tough for them to get any sort of win streak going. Currently, the last 10, they're 3-7. Atlanta 7-3. I don't like Atlanta's pitching staff against some of these NL offenses, but to finish out the year, they don't really got to do much. They got to win like 4 or 5 games. You know what I'm saying? They're pretty good off. Pretty well off, I should say. They should cruise. Let's touch down on Ronald Acuna. How young is he? 25 homers, 14 stolen bases, not even 100 games played yet. That's amazing. They still got Freddie Freeman, who's going to be in the NL MVP discussions, as he should, because this is a team that's cruising, I think, to the title. Mm-hmm. Washington, Bryce Harper's going to play his little heart out because he has to. He has this big offseason coming ahead, so he still wants to show, like, hey, I can play well. And if you take a look at him, he's had a monster season, just not in the batting average category.
Right.
He's matched over 30 homers. His slugging percentage is over 550, and he walks a ton. So he's going to demand a lot of money still. He's very young. Atlanta is going to set up for the postseason. I don't trust the pitching staff. That's kind of, I'm going to say beware. They've looked decent, but I'm a little worried about it, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also tend to think that Atlanta is going to win this division, but like Johnny said, 7 games, Atlanta and Philadelphia. Pretty much the winner of that series is going to win that division. Of course, Philly's got the Mets, and of course, like we said, Jason Worth called everybody except the Mets, so that's how the Mets are portrayed in people's heads. So I think Atlanta is going to win the division as well, but beware Philly. Philly can make this close. Moving on to the NL West. Let's go to the West. Colorado, the Dodgers, and Arizona has slipped a bit, but Arizona is still in it, theoretically. Who's taking that one? We'll start with Bruce, since he's out in NL West territory.
I have the pleasure of watching the Rockies pretty much daily, so I get to see what they do. I still think the Dodgers are going to take this. I noted in the column I wrote for the Scorecrow, one of the first ones I wrote, it was about how I think the Dodgers are going to surge up and claim the West. Today they have a pretty big series starting. It's going to be very tough still because the Dodgers are coming off of a 10-game road stretch, and they did well over it. They went 6-4. And they actually really stomped the Cardinals really bad with Puig hitting 5 homers in 19 hours. That was amazing.
Yeah. Allow me to correct you there, Bruce. They are at the Dodgers tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it rounds out a 13-game total.
There we go.
That the 13-game stretch that the Dodgers will play straight. And so the Rockies come into a good situation, even though it's on the road, because the Dodgers could be very tired from all the road traveling that they have. But it's tough for me to think that this loaded Dodgers team is not just going to surge its way through with that lineup they have there, with adding Machado, with Justin Turner, with Cody Bellinger. I mean, this lineup they have is deep. The pitching staff is really good. Clayton Kershaw is still really good on a down year. He's really good. I have a hard time seeing the Rockies continue this lead, but if they have a very good series tonight, John Gray against Ryu, you never know, man. The Rockies, if they end up sweeping them, that's a pretty big gap. I don't think Arizona is going to climb out of the hole that they're creating themselves. It's really tough. They're playing the Cubs. If they make it, they deserve it. But it's going to be tough for them to come back out of this 4.5 game, I think it is. They're 4.5 back in the... Yeah, and I have to think now at this point, the wild card's coming out of the Central. Maybe the Dodgers, one of them, but you're not getting 2 of them out of the West. You're not. So I think the Arizona Diamondbacks are out of it. I think the Dodgers are going to take it over the final couple weeks.
And then wait a second, Ryu still exists? He's still in the league? I thought his injuries got the best of him. I guess I'm wrong.
He's pitching tonight against John Gray. He has a 2.42 ERA on the year, so he's been a healthy bump to that rotation. Walker Buehler's been amazing. Clayton Kershaw's still pretty dominant, even though concerns about the velocity, strikeout percentage, K per 9, and all that stuff. He's still rocking a 2.51 ERA himself. When you take a look at it, they're facing Ryu, Kershaw, and Walker Buehler in this 3-game set. It's an amazing 3-game set. I highlighted it in the matchup of the week article I wrote today, actually, because you have pretty much 2 of the 3 big pitchers for Colorado, John Gray, Kyle Freeland, going against Ryu and Clayton Kershaw. So this matchup can go either way. Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story have been amazing this year still, and you never know what can happen. They can play really well. It's a tough race in the NL West, but I still think the Dodgers are taking it.
Oh, of course, and I got to add, Walker Buehler facing the Texas Rangers. I and like a lot of MLB people thought about Chuck Norris.
Right.
You got to love Chuck Norris facts. Chuck Norris once got bit by a rattlesnake, After 3 days of pain and suffering, the rattlesnake died. Chuck Norris, if you read the Guinness Book of World Records, on the back page it states all of these records are held by the second best record holder. Chuck Norris owns all the records. But besides that point, Johnny, your take on the NL West?
Well, I was a big believer in Arizona. I'll have to admit they have a tough road. I mean, they have a home stretch here. 3 with Chicago, 3 with Colorado, and 3 with the Dodgers. So, like Philly, they're a few games back, but they kind of hold their own destiny. They control their own destiny, and they have these games against their division rivals in Colorado and LA. If they can take this series against Chicago and Colorado and LA can beat themselves up, they have those 2 teams ahead of them. So they still have a shot, but I don't see it happening. I think they're a little too far back, and I think between Dodgers and Colorado, honestly, I could see Colorado doing it.
Okay.
I could see Colorado doing it.
Yeah, I like Colorado. I actually like Colorado's lineup over the Dodgers lineup, but I like the Dodgers' experience over Colorado's. At some point, this team's got to win it all. I mean, Kershaw has been in the playoffs for how many years now? 5, 6, 7? And he still hasn't won that World Series. So, at some point, it's got to happen. So, give me the Dodgers to win the West, even though I want to see Colorado doing it. Yeah, pretty much. Moving on to the Central, in our last division race preview. We got the Cubs, we got Milwaukee, and we got St. Louis. Now, of course, knowing my Cub fandom, you answer wrong, I end this show. I'm kidding. Johnny, we'll start with you. Who's taking the Central?
It's close between Chicago and Milwaukee, and they don't play each other the rest of the year. Looking at the matchups, I think it favors Milwaukee, but they're still 2.5 games back. So I think the Cubs hang on to that division. Milwaukee's got kind of a stranglehold on the wild card. They're 3 games ahead of St. Louis and the Dodgers. So I think they have that in hand, the home field advantage for the 1 wild card, which is going to help them a lot because they don't have that true ace, even though they traded for Gio Gonzalez, who we mentioned the last time on the show.
Right.
But they don't have that true ace. Being in that wild card game, it really doesn't affect them so much because they don't have to use that ace to move on. They can play the bullpen game because they've done that all year long. Their matchups the rest of the season, they're home against Cincinnati. They're at Pittsburgh, at St. Louis, and then home against Detroit. So they don't have much competition going forward, and they should pretty much cruise at least to the wild card. Now, if Chicago falters, Chicago's in Arizona. They also have a 3-game series against Pittsburgh and a 3-game series against St. Louis to end the season. Mm-hmm. If Chicago should falter and Milwaukee gets hot against these bad teams, there's a possibility Milwaukee takes the division. I just don't see Chicago faltering enough to blow that division lead. And I think once it gets down to it, going into that final weekend, that the teams are going to try to get comfortable as far as setting themselves up for the playoffs.
Now,
I still think Chicago takes it.
Yeah, adding to Johnny's point, this is how Craig Counsell is looking to this analyzing this Red series.
What do you think having a 37-year-old?
We're on to Cincinnati. It's nothing about the past, nothing about the future. Right now, we're preparing for Cincinnati.
Am I right?
That's true.
We're on to Cincinnati. Bruce, your take on the Central?
I believe Chicago's still going to take it. I'm going to touch on St. Louis first a little bit. Matt Carpenter struggled the past couple of weeks.
He needs some salsa.
Really hard.
He needs some salsa.
Yeah, he does because, I mean, not to take it away from him, the only reason he's there, or the only reason they're there is because of him. Johnny will touch on that in a little bit, I'm sure. And I look at it, this is not the time for him to slump, but the reason I'm going to look at the Cubs over even Milwaukee, as Johnny noted, Milwaukee don't have the true number 1 ace starter and I believe Chicago might have 3 of them at this point in time, and they're all veterans. They know how to win deep in games. Cole Hamels, he knows what it's like playing in October. John Lester, he knows what it's like. Jose Quintana has a lot to prove because he has been pretty bad since they've acquired him. But check this out. Over the last 30 days, the highest ERA of those 3 is the newly acquired Cole Hamels at a 2.23.
Huh, wow.
Jose Quintana has a 2.1. John Lester has a 2.08. That's 32 innings, 34 innings, and 30 innings. They have combined for 7 and 2 out of 16 starts. They are 7 and 2 out of 16 starts. This is a team. These are guys that are throwing the team on their back, and they're saying, "Hey guys, don't worry. We're going to get healthy." Chris Bryant just got back. They got MVP candidate Javier Baez there. Anthony Rizzo has been one of the hottest hitters in the second half. But now we're really looking that they're leaning on the pitching staff, because that's what you lean on to win World Series, is a monster 3-man pitching staff with a deep bullpen. That's what you're looking for. The Cubs have it, and they're showing that even when it comes down to, hey, Milwaukee, we can lose to you and you can get close, we're going to step it up, and we're actually going to win, a couple of games in a row and really put the pressure on you guys to perform when you haven't been here before.
They just want to make things interesting. The Cubs do with Milwaukee.
Right. Exactly.
So, of course, it's pretty obvious who I think is going to win the division, and I'll play the famous song in a little bit. But obviously, because of my fandom, I think that Chicago is going to win this division. Now, Milwaukee and St. Louis have done wonders to keep this close, but I think the Cubs have got this. And we sing... Go Cubs, go! So we're going to touch on this wild card race, and then we'll get to NL Cy Young and MVP race. This has been quite an impressive show, as we're almost hitting the hour mark. But you know what? This is what podcasts are for: great conversations. So wild card in the NL, we got Milwaukee, we got St. Louis, we got the Dodgers. Throw in Arizona and Philly if you want in that race too. We'll go with Bruce. Who are your 2 teams?
I'm going to take Milwaukee and Colorado at this point. I was really hopeful that it would be Arizona and Colorado, but I don't think Arizona can do it. I think Milwaukee will be the top seed out of the 2 wild cards. I think Colorado's going to take... I think they'll take the second one, and I think it'll be over St. Louis. I think they're going to struggle. I think the pitching staff is a tad bit young at certain points. Carpenter, if he cannot get it going, that team, he is their engine. He is what runs it. And sometimes you have seen him struggle for months on end. It hasn't just been 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. It's been a long period of time. And realistically, we have seen maybe longer of a slump, or this type of, Matt Carpenter than we have of the extremely top 5 hitter Matt Carpenter. With Milwaukee, I think they're very, very deep offensively, and I think they can give any one of these teams a very tough run in a 1-game setting, or in a best of any at that point, because I think they're deep enough to contend with any team in any setting right now. Milwaukee is a very scary team at this point. If Jesus Aguilar can get it going like he was in the first half, and we can continue to get Yelich and Kane doing what they're doing, watch out.
Lorenzo Cain, pretty much the next Carlos Gomez in Milwaukee. He runs fast. Johnny, who you got?
Yeah, I'd like to say Lorenzo Cain's a little bit better than Carlos Gomez. But,
I agree.
Overall. But I'd have to agree. I still think Colorado might take the West. Milwaukee's definitely got the wild card. And I would agree with Bruce as far as saying they might be one of the most dangerous teams in the playoffs because of their bullpen. Granted, their starters aren't great, and they don't have that true ace. I mean, yes, Gio Gonzalez, Zach Davies, yeah, those names really knock you out. But the fact that they have probably the best reliever this year overall in Josh Hader, when you look at overall over the course of the year, he's the next Andrew Miller. He's what Andrew Miller did a few years ago with Cleveland.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and Jeffers, and getting Xavier Cedeno, and also having Knable. And if Knable's back to what he's done, they're dangerous. They're a dangerous team. And that's what you need as far as when you get in the playoffs is that depth of bullpen. You take a couple of those starters. So you have Gio Gonzalez, so you have Zach Davies starting. That's fine because you got a few of the guys who were starters during the season are in the bullpen now. And you mix and match. And Craig Counsell, another year in, he's got a little more experience. He knows what he has in the bullpen. Not only that, we touched on it last time when we talked. You know, they signed Curtis Granderson. You know, they got him. They got Mike Moustakas. A couple left-handed bats to go with a couple of their right-handed bats. They have depth of lineup. And they have depth as far as playing matchups, what Bruce touched on last time. And these are important pieces. Like Granderson, I think it was the other day, Granderson in the game-winning homer.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what you get when you get a veteran. You get a guy who's been there before, a guy who can hit a home run, take a walk, steal a base, catch a ball. Like he can be put in those situations. And it's kind of what we touched on with Cleveland with Josh Donaldson. This is all you need them for. They're not looking to start Granderson in center field every day. They're looking for him to come off the bench. They're looking for him to play against the righty. They're looking for him to pinch run. And they need a run from second base when you got a slower guy like Aguilar or someone on second base and you're down by a run. This is what they need. And this is exactly what they got. Milwaukee's scary going into the playoffs. And no one is running away with the AL. Chicago's got the best record in the AL. They have 87 wins.
NL, you mean?
NL, I'm sorry. And there are 4 teams in the AL with more than 90. So this just goes to show how close the NL is. And you get in.
Milwaukee just beat Chicago 2 out of 3.
Exactly.
Yep.
I mean, they're a tough team, and they have 85 wins. Chicago's got 87. Atlanta's got 83. Colorado, LA, and St. Louis all have 82. They're all very similar. And there's no reason to think Milwaukee can't do it. And personally, to me, I think the other wild card comes out of the West, whether it's Colorado or LA. I think Colorado wins the division. I got more faith in Bruce's team than he does.
All right.
I think Colorado wins the division. I think LA is the wild card. And honestly, I think Milwaukee beats LA in the wild card game.
Alrighty. Well, I also think that Milwaukee's going to win the first wild card because they're just a little too far up for St. Louis and LA to catch, and that's because they're beating each other up pretty much, as you have pretty much said that the NL has done. Second wild card, I guess I have to agree that it will be the loser of the Western Division, whether that be Colorado or the Dodgers. I think you see both teams in the playoffs. And like I said on the last show, I think St. Louis is going to be that team that's there right now that falls apart right at the end. Sorry, Alex DeWitt, my Cardinals fan / Tom Green podcast super fan. So with that being said, we hit on the AL Cy Young. Let's go to the NL Cy Young. Let's start with Johnny. NL Cy Young.
Oh, man. Well, Bruce and I were talking about this before for a good 45 minutes. I won't go on as long. But the bottom line is it depends on what the voters... Personally, I think DeGrom has it.
Okay.
If I had a vote, I would vote for DeGrom. He's been the most consistent. And when you look at the stats against his own division... He's dominated Atlanta and Philly. He's given up 4 earned runs, I think, in 51 innings, is what we said before. Whereas Scherzer's had a little issue with Miami and Atlanta. Like I said, if I had a vote, I would go with DeGrom.
Okay.
The problem is you have some old-time voters that'll look at wins and with peripherals being the same, if Scherzer gets a few more starts, but he looks to possibly get 3 more starts this year, he could potentially have 20 wins and 300 strikeouts. Now, when you look at those numbers, they stand out.
Yes.
And I think that's what's going to stand out with some of the voters, as we saw last year with the MVP voting. What did Joey Votto lose to Mike Stanton? Carlos Stanton.
I know, and it's been a few years now, but I kind of still want to call him
by
Mike.
2 votes. So these 2, 3, 4 votes will make a big difference. And I think if Scherzer gets to that point, those old-time numbers are going to take him over the edge. Whereas I still think DeGrom has been the most consistent, and he's been the best pitcher. Bruce can give you a lot more stats on it, but we were talking about it before. Personally, like I said, if I had a vote, I would go for DeGrom. But with Scherzer in the last few starts, he may push those older voters over the edge and win it.
Yeah, and I honestly thought that Nola had a grip on this until this past month, because Philly and Atlanta both has just outshined in their quote-unquote rebuilding seasons, and one of them will make the playoffs. But I do have to agree with DeGrom, and of course I'm going to play that classic Family Guy scene.
Because so far, Halloween's a bigger letdown than being a Mets fan.
Opening day, and here's the first pitch, and the season's over.
I bet Jason Worth thought that as he decided not to call the Mets. But I was actually shocked that the Mets did not trade DeGrom, and it's partially because of Syndergaard. Because if you have Thor and DeGrom as your 1-2 punch, you got something going. But it's the rest of your lineup and that has to produce. And I'm not real. And as far as David Wright goes, it's like, will he be back? Will he be relevant? Should he just retire? I don't know. But with that being said, I will go with DeGrom as well. Scherzer, I'm still a little petty about Scherzer leaving Detroit. Honestly, I know he wanted the money, but I saw that 1-page ad that he left in Detroit, and it felt like a 1-sentence ad more than a 1-page. So I've just been petty about that ever since. And yes, I can be petty sometimes, kind of like Hawk Harrelson in Chicago and on the South Side. Hawk Harrelson's hilarious, but I got to go with DeGrom. Bruce, NL Cy Young.
I think it's DeGrom, and I think it should be DeGrom by a pretty substantial margin. I don't think that what Scherzer has done is enough to really overshine the dominance that DeGrom has had all year long. He has had 4 starts where he did not have a quality start, and 2 of those starts he didn't give up any runs. They pulled him for precautionary reasons. 1 start he was 1 out away from having a quality start, and his final start that wasn't a quality start was 6 innings, 4 earned runs. So literally 1 run away from being a quality start. That's amazing. After, I think it's July 18th, or no, maybe it was May 18th, he has not given up more than 3 earned runs. May 18th, he has given up 7 innings, 1 earned run. That was buff. Honestly, it's 421, he hasn't given up more than 3 earned runs. It's been amazing what he's done. Scherzer has had ups and downs, and when you talk about the Cy Young, you got to talk about how consistency comes into play. And when you take a look at it, Jacob DeGrom sitting there with 251 strikeouts, that's a little over 20 below Scherzer, so that's not a huge deal. The big thing for me is the home runs. Scherzer has, I believe, 21 home runs given up this year. Yeah, 21 home runs, where Jacob DeGrom has 10. That's huge. That is monstrous to me. Where you take a look at it, that supports the 1.78 ERA. Scherzer's at a 2.51. He has very tough matchups. His last start's in Colorado. He gives up a decent amount of home runs to a team that hits a lot of home runs in Colorado, potentially. He could see a spike where his ERA finishes, Scherzer this is, at about a 2.6. DeGrom has dominated his potential last 2 starts. You have the Nationals and Braves, He has absolutely destroyed them this year. He could realistically finish with a 1.7, 1.68 ERA. I don't see how you're going to take it away from him. Well, not you, but like how people can take it away from him at that point just because he might have 10 wins. He still will have over 200 innings. He'll still have 30 games, 30 games started. He still has over a 30% strikeout rate. He's been absolutely amazing this year.
Yes, and something my dad and I have talked about extensively. Wins are such a flawed statistic because, like you said, with DeGrom, DeGrom isn't on that great. Excuse me with this cold. DeGrom has not been on the greatest Mets team on the earth. I mean, this isn't the Miracle Mets of 1969, LOL. With that, and of course, with that being said, with DeGrom's 1.68 ERA, I wish it was just 0.01 more. That'd be amazing. But besides that point, DeGrom showed he deserves it. And like I said, I was surprised that he wasn't traded. Now back to my point of myself being sort of petty. I looked up as Bruce was talking Hawk Harrelson's rant on Angel Hernandez, and this is kind of how I took the Michigan loss to Michigan State 3 years ago on the punt. Of course, when Detroit losing to San Francisco in 2012, even though they got swept, etc. Here's how I felt. Side note, whenever I talk with my same cousin, Joe Kitchen, that I've talked about slightly earlier, that's kind of how we talk about sports. I'm Hawk, he's Steve.
Right there, he's safe. He is safe. Have the ball. And another blow called by Hernandez.
My point being, sometimes I can get petty. But with that being said, we've hit Cy Young. Let's go AL MVP. We'll start with Johnny.
AL MVP. Oh man, this is a tough one. I mean, basically, you're looking at Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, and Jose Ramirez.
Mm-hmm.
They're all fairly close. Mike Trout is still, I'm sorry, but he's still the best player in the major leagues. He's still, and with Betts hurt now, if they keep him out, I was just reading actually that Mookie Betts might DH tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't see why they would do this. I mean, honestly, we talked about before. Boston's got it wrapped up. They have the AL East wrapped up. All they have to do is basically win one more game, and they have it wrapped up. Why play Betts? Why risk further injury? Why let him aggravate it? I understand you don't want to rest the guy going into the playoffs completely and have him be cold, with a 13-day layoff or 15-day layoff or whatever it may be. But if you put him on a 10-day DL now, you can still bring him back for 2 games before the playoffs start. With that being said, I still think Trout has it. I give Jose Ramirez a lot of credit, and his 30-30 season is going to hold a lot of weight.
Right.
But Trout is still the best player in the league, and until someone convinces me that someone else is better, he's still the MVP.
Yeah, and it's a shame that Trout just doesn't have the pieces around him. And they tried this year. They had Kinsler. They had Shohei Ohtani. He went down with Tommy John, I believe. The pieces are there, but they just can't keep the machine rolling. And Trout, once again, is in a pickle where he is not going to the playoffs for yet another season. With that being said, I had JD actually as the MVP when I talked with Reese White from the 6-Man Rotation podcast back at the July trade deadline. But with this Trout, Betts, or Jose, if we're talking about who has helped the team the most reach the postseason, I would think Jose. But MVP is more of who is the best player. And gee, I hate to give the MVP to a guy on another bad team, and the Angels aren't that bad, but compared to the rest of the AL, they're not that good. You got it. I can see Trout. I mean, I like Brook Trout better than Mike Trout sometimes because Michigan State fishes the Brook Trout, but Trout's a great player. I almost kind of wish he'd go to Philly just to see him play back at home. Be an Eagles. He's a huge Eagles fan. But besides the point, you got to give Trout the MVP, I guess. Betts has done great. Ramirez has done great. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Trout, I think, is going to get it. That was my point. Mm-hmm. Personally, to me, Jose Ramirez deserves it. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's been better, and to me, like the point you were making just now, the MVP is the most valuable player. It's not the best player in the league. It's not the best hitter. That's what we have Silver Sluggers for. The best fielder is with Gold Gloves. The MVP is the most valuable. If your team doesn't make the playoffs, I'm sorry, you don't deserve a most valuable player award. Just how valuable are you? So my whole point about Trout before is I think he's going to win it because he's been the best player. If I had a vote, I would probably go Jose Ramirez. It's tough with Frankie Lindor there.
Yes.
But I think the 30-30 club, it's an exclusive club. Mm-hmm. And he's been just about as good as some of the other players in the argument.
Right.
And the thing with Mookie Betts, I love Mookie Betts too, and granted, he's obviously the dominant, the Red Sox, but he's got JD Martinez there. Jose Ramirez has Frankie Lindor there. So it's kind of hard. You know, and then you throw Alex Bregman in the argument.
Huh?
You know, honestly, Alex Bregman's been there. He's been pretty consistent this year. Altuve was hurt. Correa was hurt. Springer was hurt. Bregman's pretty good. He's slashing 294, 401, and 551. He's got 30 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 100 ribbies. You know, he's got an argument too. But I think the 30-30 thing with Jose Ramirez being more of a complete player, so to speak, I would vote for Jose Ramirez. I think Trout's still going to get it. But I think Jose Ramirez deserves it.
Yes, I do agree.
Just as last year, I thought, and Bruce and I talked about this, I thought Judge deserved it last year over Altuve. Because the Yankees would have never been in the position they were in, even to contend for a wild card last year. If Judge didn't have it.
Right.
If Judge didn't start off the year he had. Granted, he got slow and he got fatigued, or whatever you might call it, toward the end of the year. I think they gave it to Altuve because Judge is younger. First full season, Altuve kind of a lifetime achievement award type thing.
Right.
That's why I think the voters will give it more toward Mike Trout or even Mookie Betts over a Jose Ramirez or Alex Bregman. Although I think a Ramirez or Bregman is more deserving.
Right.
I think you're going to see the same type of voting as you did last year with Altuve over Judge.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with Johnny. I think Trout's going to get it, but I think Ramirez deserves it more. Bruce, chime in. Who do you think is going to get it?
I think Johnny touched on him, and I think he knows who I'm going to say now. I looked at it for a while. He touched on him for a little bit. I think it has to go to Alex Bregman. I look at Mookie Betts, 129 games played, and you're going to rest him. That's going to be tough. I know he's been great. That's going to be tough. Not just JD Martinez. You also have Andrew Benintendi, who's been having a great year as well. Another solid year. You still got a Bogart. You still have Bogarts there. You have he has a very good team around him too. Johnny touched on how the Astros have been hurt. Alex Bregman. He has a 100 season with 10 stolen bases. Yes, the stolen bases are something. I know the 30-30 is something. But he also, Jose Ramirez also has Frankie Lindor, 35 homers for him, 120 runs with 23 stolen bases for Frankie Lindor. That's monstrous. They're also playing in one of, if not the worst division in baseball. How much are we going to knock them for that? They can cruise now. Like, if they were playing superior competition, were they going to just, mash like this. No other division has this type of separation type of deal, so Mike Trout, I think he's probably going to get it again. You can make a case for him every year, but his team's not in the playoffs. You cannot. I don't think you can give an MVP out to a team not in the playoffs unless they make a ridiculous season, something that's historical that blows everyone out of the water. But I think you take a look at, there's so many teams that have other people that they could play with. Alex Bregman hasn't had really anybody all year long except that pitching staff, and he's been flat out amazing. Mm-hmm. And I think it should go to Alex Bregman. I think either Jose Ramirez or Mike Trout will win it, but I think it should go to Alex Bregman.
Yeah, and Bregman kept that team treading water when Altuve and Correa were hurt in July going into August. So with that being said, let's move on to the National League MVP. Let's start with Bruce. Who's going to win in the National League?
Who's going to win in the National League? That is a tough one, because who is going to win, or who do I think should win? I honestly think Trevor Story should win.
Okay.
I don't think he will win. I think you'll see Freddie Freeman get a lot of love. I think Christian Yelich, I think he'll actually win it, honestly. Looking at how the season he's had, looking at things that have went on, I think Matt Carpenter has kind of pulled himself back a little bit by slumping these last 2 weeks. Javier Baez is great. I really like him, but I think some of the analytical people are going to look at the real big discrepancy in strikeout percentage and walk percentage with Javi Baez. Because when you want an MVP, when you also look at it, you want a guy, if you have a guy that walks at 9% versus a guy that walks at 4%, that's a pretty big difference, especially when he strikes out 4% less. That's why his on-base percentage is a 381 for Christian Yelich. Christian Yelich has just been everything that they traded for, and he's pretty much been the leader of this makeshift team that the Brewers have kind of threw together for almost 12 months now, and they're really, like we've been saying, a scary team, and he's been the catalyst. He's been leading. He has 30 homers, 19 steals, career high in home runs for him. He's batting .313, .381, .556. That's amazing when you take a look at it. The reason I think Trevor Story should win it is because he's doing things at shortstop that nobody has ever done before. And when you take a look at historic things, Johnny mentioned that the Rockies might be able to push through and take that division. If they do, Nolan Arenado kind of disappeared for the last couple of weeks. Trevor Story hit 3 home runs the other day, and they only won 5-3. So without his 3 home runs, they're not even winning that game. Right. And they're barely winning right now. They're a half a game up. But that's the difference between winning and losing the league right now, and he hit 3 home runs. Tell me that isn't clutch. He has 33 homers, 26 stolen bases, and he has 40 doubles. No shortstop has ever done 30-plus homers, 40-plus doubles, and 25-plus stolen bases. He's hitting .290, .344, .551. Yes, I get it. The home and road splits are a big difference. But honestly, at this point in time, it's a full season body worth of work for me, and you got to take a look at it. I think Trevor Story should win. I think Christian Yelich will win.
Okay. My thoughts are I like Freeman, Arenado, Kane, like you said, Yelich, and Story. I think it'll probably go to Freeman, and it's because he's kind of been that glue that's held together that young team, that young Braves team in this pseudo-rebuilding season. I think that really speaks wonders as to terms of the most valuable player on the team. I do like what Bruce said there on Story, hitting 3 home runs to win a game 5-3. If he didn't hit those home runs, they don't win that game, of course. But I could really see Freeman, of course. Javier Baez, of course, I got to mention him because I'm a Cubby guy. And, of course, Javier Baez's gum, if we remember 2 years ago in San Francisco. He catches the gum, points at the camera, points at people in the outfield, then points at the camera. You saw that. So you got to mention Baez's gum as well as Baez. I think it's going to go to Freeman, like I had said, because I think he's been the glue that's held that team together through its ups and downs. Johnny, what do you think?
Well, I love Yelich. I like him a lot. A guy that's not going to get mentioned, and none of us picked them to get to the playoffs, so he shouldn't be there, is Paul Goldschmidt.
Oh, yes.
He started off the season slow, but the guy's slashing 299, 400, and 555 with 33 home runs. He's doing his usual thing. Granted, he doesn't have to fill the bases like he normally does, but Gold Glove, first baseman. I don't think a Freddie Freeman will win it, only because first base gets disrespected a lot.
Okay.
Just like Votto did last year.
Right.
A guy, even on Yelich's team, and this is why I don't know if Yelich will win it, is Lorenzo Cain.
Right.
He's a guy that's, I don't like WAR so much, but his
like
defense
these too,
is Gold Glove
me.
caliber, and his base running is top notch. He's got a 6.7 WAR compared to Yelich's 5.3, and that's B WAR. So, I mean, I don't put a lot of stock in that, but this is what people are going to look at. This is what voters are going to look at, because this is what they tend to do now.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, a lot's going to depend on if St. Louis makes it or Arizona makes it. If St. Louis makes it, I think you have to give it to Carpenter. If Arizona makes it, I think you have to give it to Goldschmidt.
Okay.
Because the most valuable player is the guy that carried you and the guy that brought you through the playoffs, in my opinion. Without Matt Carpenter being hot for those 3 months, St. Louis isn't even in discussion right now.
They would be looking for a new manager.
Without Goldschmidt, Arizona doesn't even sniff the playoffs. They have a losing record right now. So if either one of them make the playoffs, I would give it to one of those guys. As it stands now, and we talk about, I think I got to give it to Javi Baez overall.
Now him or his
that would
gum?
be my pick, but it's so close. But I think Cain and Yelich take away from each other.
Okay.
They're both free agents that were signed this year. They both play good defense. Cain, stellar defense. Well, Yelich was traded for players. But the thing is, they play on the same team. And just as the AL is with Jose Ramirez, Frankie Lindor, Mookie Betts, and JD Martinez, we look at that, and it kind of takes away from the other guy. And I think that's what you're going to see with the voters with Milwaukee. And I kind of honestly disagree. I honestly agree with them. I think someone like either Matt Carpenter, Javi Baez, or Paul Goldschmidt has actually taken their team on their back at points this year.
Right.
And I think whichever one of those teams, which Chicago's probably going to make it, that's the player that I would vote for the MVP. I think that Baez gets it. And I would vote for him, and I honestly think he will get it.
Can I push back for a little bit on that one, just for a tad bit? I understand the idea of saying Lorenzo Cain takes away from Yelich, but even when you take a look at even them compared, Yelich has tripled Lorenzo Cain's home runs. He has 20 more runs than him. He has 50 more RBI than he does. Lorenzo Cain has 9 more stolen bases, so not that huge of a discrepancy in speed value, actually. Yelich walks at a 9% rate, Cain at 11% rate. Yeah, he strikes out less, but he's not really doing more with it because Yelich is actually a higher batting average than he does. So when Lorenzo Cain somewhat takes away from him, yes, but then Christian Yelich, he's just dominated his season kind of quietly. And even versus like Javi Baez, his numbers to him are very comparable. The only thing that Javi really has over him is the RBI. And I understand what Johnny's saying when it comes to, he was like the example of the third baseman for the Astros. We were just talking about Bregman.
Bregman, yes.
How he held the team together when everybody was going on. That's Baez. He's done that quite well. And so I can see why, understandably with Cub Nation, I can see why they would pick him. I don't think Freddie Freeman can do it because his numbers are, I mean, as a first baseman, Johnny pointed at it, it's kind of suppressed because of the position. So you have to put up some really spectacular numbers. And he's done great, but 21 homers, 90 runs, 87 ribbies, a 304, 384, 494. That's awesome. That's another stellar season. But what Baez, Yelich, Carpenter, I can understand if Carpenter, because without him, that team doesn't make it. Story, they're dwarfing what Freddie Freeman has done pretty much this year as production-wise.
Gotcha.
That was my point about Baez. I mean, personally to me, like I said, the most valuable player, like I said before, the most valuable player is different from the best player in the league. If I was going to say who is the best player in the NL this year, I'd probably give it to Yelich. But who's been the most valuable to their team? I would have to say Baez. Rizzo struggled early in the year. Chris Bryant's been on and off the DL. Baez has had the same impact as Carpenter has and Goldschmidt has. That's why I said those three guys. Whenever one of those teams make the playoffs, he's probably the guy that's going to get it and should get it. Baez is pretty much a shoo-in as far as because Chicago's going to make the playoffs. Whether they win the division or not, that's up to Milwaukee. But they're the ones that Baez has kept that team together. Even with the veterans. And Contreras has had an off year.
That's true, too.
So Baez has been the guy. Same, like I said, same as Carpenter was for a couple months, and same as Goldschmidt was after the first 2 months of his slump. He's been his usual Goldschmidt self.
I have a question for you, Johnny. Do you take into consideration the whole entire team mold? So, for instance, the Cubs have a better pitching staff and a better bullpen as far as like starting pitching goes over the Brewers. Do you think that takes away from a guy like Javier, like Baez's production this year, because he kind of has maybe had the security of having a good deep pitching staff, where Yelich has to kind of sit back and say, well, shoot, I have to slug my way through this year because this pitching staff, they're going to give up 4 to 5, runs a game. Does that go into consideration for you?
Yes, it does to a point, and I see your point, definitely, and I think Yelich has taken it on himself, especially being traded for, and then obviously Lorenzo King getting a big contract and stuff like that. You take that on yourself, and I'm sure they both do, and they both are responsible, but the thing with Milwaukee is the pitching is different than the lineup. So I look at it like the pitching is going to do their thing, the lineup's going to do their thing. And yes, the wins and losses, like I'm saying, most valuable players should come from a team that makes the playoffs. And that goes through the whole team aspect, defense, pitching, bullpen, everything.
Right.
I just think that the impact on your team's success is the ultimate driving factor in an MVP. Now, it's subjective, of course, because you can say, without Yelich, well, maybe Milwaukee's not in the wild card race at all. Without King, they're not. Without Carpenter, St. Louis isn't. So you can take each one of those guys and take them out of their team, and you can say, well, that team's not in it. So they all have that same impact. I just think that you have to judge the amount of impact that it comes across. And I think Baez, especially going up against Carpenter or Goldschmidt, Baez has more a defensive factor.
I agree.
And also base running. He's got 21 stolen bases. Whereas Goldschmidt only stole 6 this year. I think Carpenter's got 2. So he adds a base running aspect to it. The defensive versatility. And that also helps his pitching staff. So he's impacting the game for his team in all aspects of the game. Whereas Goldschmidt and Carpenter not so much.
Right.
That's why I got to give it to Baez. My opinion, and I think he will get it. But I can definitely see the argument for Yelich. I think Yelich personally has probably been the best player in the NL this year. Overall, I just think the impact is not the same as Baez has had on Chicago winning the division.
Right. Yeah,
So,
and that's what I was.
to me, that's an MVP.
And that's what I kind of said about Freeman, too, is he's kind of the glue that holds that team together, as Johnny was saying that Baez is. And, of course, Johnny feels that Baez has done better, and I certainly hope he wins, too. Because, of course, like Harry Carey said, I'm a Cub fan and a Bud man. I love to see Baez win it. So, with that being said, this has been probably the longest podcast I've done, but it's probably been one of the greatest. And so, with that being said, I guess we'll call it here. Is there anything else that you would like to add to this wonderful Tom Green podcast?
Nothing for me, Tom. Thanks for having us on again. And as always, follow us on Twitter at the Score Crow.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. We appreciate being here, man. As you can tell, we love talking. So thank you for having us again.
Oh, definitely. It's been quite a conversation, and some that, if you made it through this entire conversation, you deserve a gold star, because this has been amazing. An hour 35. We're going to hit an hour 36 when I shut this off. So what a show it has been. Just talking division races and MVP and Cy Young. So with that being said, great talking to you guys. 2 weeks to go in the MLB season. We're going to have some playoff content for you as well. And I have to also hit another huge thing that just happened to me just before we went on the show. You guys have heard of Tim Brando, correct?
No, I have not, no.
Okay.
No.
Well, he's done... he's a play-by-play guy for Fox. He's been at CBS for many years as well. He's going to be calling Michigan-Nebraska on Saturday. And I contacted him. He's one of the many people that I've met over the years. We're going to be recording a show Wednesday night.
Right? He's going to be on your podcast?
Yes, he will be.
Right. That's awesome. Very good.
So
Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
listen for that show coming up Wednesday night / Thursday morning. This has been another wonderful MLB edition of the Tom Green Podcast. He is Bruce Cagle Jr. He is Johnnie Black. Not Johnny Back in Black, just Johnnie Black.
Although I do love AC/DC.
There you go. And this has been another wonderful edition of the Tom Green Podcast.